Hello everyone, Dr. Sil here. I'm a junior doctor in Australia training to become a psychiatrist. And I sat down to film some videos today, and I wanted to film some videos about other topics, but this issue was front of mind for very obvious reasons. There's been a mass stabbing incident in Sydney at Bondi Junction from a person who suffered from schizophrenia. And my instinct to these kind of events is, I think, avoidance. I don't want to think about them. When I hear about them, I kind of get, like this is going to be a this is a big problem. It's confronting. I get scared and I kind of want to run away inside. But this is what mental illness treatment is all about: the prevention of harm to self and others. And you kind of get desensitized to that term, the harm of self to others. You hear it so much, but this is the reality of it: is that in catastrophic situations, things like this happen. So six people were murdered, and others were injured, and the person himself was also killed by a policewoman. But he was shot, and I haven't, I'm not, this isn't a video to tell you all the facts of the situation or give you statistics on mental illness treatment or anything like that. I think this video is more for me, actually, as a bit of therapy in a sense. Kind of, let's call it YouTube parasocial group therapy, for me to share a reflection on what happens when there's a mass violent incidents involving mental illness. And the impact it has on me personally, but also professionally. Schizophrenia is probably the condition I see most in my work as a psychiatry registrar in Australia. And I have worked with patients with forensic histories. And it is confronting and conflicting when you hear about these stories. But the first thing to say about this whole thing is, it is a tragedy, and it's if you could just turn back time, we would. I wish this hadn't happened, and my heart goes out to the families affected. I lived in Bondi for more than a year, and I used to go to the Bondi Junction shopping centre every week for groceries and stuff. I've walked those floors where the footage of where Joel Cauchi, the alleged perpetrator, you have to use alleged. It's quite clear that he was the perpetrator. Where Joel Cauchi walked. And we know very little about Joel, but we do know he had schizophrenia. The investigations are ongoing. I don't have access to any special knowledge about the case or what his mental state was or anything like that. But I've gotten a lot of message from you guys asking, if I knew him, or not that I would be able to talk about that. So I only have access to the news the same way you guys, which is not the best source for mental state examinations. Anyway, that's not the point of this video. I don't want to do a mental state examination. I guess I wanted to say a couple of things about my personal response to this as a psychiatric registrar and just as a human, and that is that it's scary. We live in. I think you get brought up. I've been brought up with a sense of trust in society and a belief in the safety of our social norms. But events like this just remind me how fragile that is, and kind of remind me that there's no guarantee that that social norms will be abided by everyone. Although it feels like we're in a very safe place, everything can go so quick with one lone actor. And that's confronting. I think the other thing, that this is more personal, but I feel like, what would I do if I was in that situation? And I feel really angry. I feel like I would want to attack him. I'm just being open and vulnerable here. I feel like, but I know that I probably wouldn't, which then confronts me and makes me feel like I'm, this might not be the most healthy terms, but maybe not as much as a man as I would want to be. So I just don't know. It makes me feel a bit weak, maybe. But I probably want to preserve my safety, if I'm being honest. And I don't know why I'm sharing all this. I think it's just cheap therapy. Anyway, thanks for listening so far. But yeah, I find that conflict, like, what would I do if I was in that situation? I'd really want to intervene and do something to stop Joel. And I think if I was seeing Joel in a clinical setting, I wouldn't have that impulse. I think I would treat him, objectively and fairly, and that's my role. But at the end of the day, I'm a human. I get these urges and instincts the same way anyone else does, and my job, if I'm working, is to manage them. But I'm in this kind of split conflict, right? Because on one hand, I'm someone who used to go to the Bondi Junction every weekend, and on the other hand, I'm a doctor who treats schizophrenia, and that first part of me wants to be angry with Joel, and the second part of me wants to treat him and rehabilitate him and prevent this from happening again if he had survived. Oh gosh, it's just confusing. But I think, it's important to learn early on in life that you can have multiple conflicting emotions. And I guess the most important thing, and we've talked about this amongst the doctors in our groups, is to maintain objectivity in our assessments, because when you have a highly publicized social event like this, it affects your ability to assess patients. Everyone's risk assessment changed on Sunday, the day after the event. Everyone's risk threshold for admissions and for involuntary treatment, it all went lower. The threshold decreased because we wanted to treat to contain risk more, because we feel like we're losing risk. But the reality of the situation is that this is an extremely rare phenomenon. Someone with schizophrenia committing stranger homicide is very, very rare. I'm not going to spit out numbers because different stats show different things, different countries, different stats. I'm not going to get into epidemiology right now. This is more an emotional reflection, but very, very rare. And as Dr. Pat McGorry has said in his public interviews, someone with schizophrenia who is treated does not pose a risk to society, right? Schizophrenia is a treatable condition, and some schizophrenia is harder to treat than other forms of schizophrenia, that's for sure. But risk, if someone's being monitored by a psychiatrist, they don't pose a threat to society. And expense, $400 to $1,000 bills to see a psychiatrist, plus the wait times, all this stuff all cause barriers to getting assessed. But what we do know about Joel Cauchi is that he had been deprescribed antipsychotics, which is, if someone has had only one episode of psychosis and they've been on antipsychotics for a year with no further evidence of psychosis, then that's okay to attempt a deprescribing of antipsychotics, as long as there is thorough follow-up, right? And once people start, there was some signs that his mental state was deteriorating when he was, according to his family, that he was becoming obsessive, and then left to Sydney and was isolated, and these kind of other warning signs. But these things are much clearer in hindsight. And the truth is, predicting violence is extremely difficult. You will see patients who say, I'm going to go attack someone, and they'll never attack that person. And then you have patients who say, I would never attack that person, and the next day they go and attack that person. And we have very thorough risk prediction tools, okay? And they require training. They are very comprehensive. They're multidisciplinary, with occupational therapists, social workers, the doctors, allied health, the nurses, the family. These are holistic risk assessment tools. And even with those tools, it's not 100%. So really we there's a shift towards thinking more about risk formulation, and instead of preventing things, it's what can we do to reduce risk, because we don't have a crystal ball. We can't 100% prevent things. And if you want, and depending on society's risk threshold, we can contain people in locked wards, but there's also the human rights of the people we have to consider very strongly. So it's this incredibly complex balance. I don't know what I've done getting myself into this field. God, it's so hard. And I think the good news is we don't have to make these decisions by ourselves. We use multidisciplinary teams, and we have support from our colleagues and the human rights commissions and lawyers and all sorts of things. So it's really important. What else did I want to talk about? I think the final thing to talk about is schizophrenia and what it's like. I saw a couple of interviews on like on some news outlets about schizophrenia, and I was like, a bit not quite. I think the and I have not had schizophrenia, so it's hard for me to give you a first-hand account from I can't tell you what it's like from a personal experience, but I can tell you what it's like from talking to patients who have had it and how they describe it. But the key thing is their reality is their internal reality, their psychosis, their beliefs, their auditory hallucinations, their delusions. It is as real to them as this watching a video is to you. If I was to tell you if I was to tell you you're not actually watching a YouTube video right now, and you're not actually on your chair or on your bed or in your house or wherever you are right now, you would feel that I'm crazy if I could say that. That's the same as someone with schizophrenia. They think you're the dream. It's like when you look in what the activity in the brain, it's like they're in a dreamlike state, and what's happening in their head is reality, and this is all the dream, and you can see it in their eyes. When someone is having active psychotic symptoms, there's a perplexity about reality. There's this vagueness. They don't look into your eyes; they look through you. The reality, where they really are, is inside their head, where they're getting this incredible stimulation of auditory hallucinations and bizarre delusions and things. And much more often than not, it is not risky to other people. It's much more often the case that they're risky to themselves. But sometimes those delusions, especially if there's a paranoid delusion, and especially if there's a passivity phenomenon, and that what a passivity phenomenon is when there's a belief that someone else is controlling your body, that you are not in control, that some foreign or alien agent is moving you, or putting thoughts into your head or putting emotions into you. Now, if you have paranoid beliefs, plus the belief that someone else is controlling your body, plus persecutory or aggressive delusions, these are all high risk things. Who knows what Joel was going through? I don't know. There does seem to be a gendered element to his attacks. He seemed to pick his targets and not take on people who were fighting back or kind of stood up to him. And the footage just makes me feel so horrible and uncomfortable. Because I've been there, right? Anyway, I'm getting all tangential, but I thought I would just put this together more for me than for anyone else's. I don't know if anyone would watch this, but I just thought I'd put together a bit of a reflection. If you know someone with schizophrenia and it's being treated, you have no, if it's being treated, you have no cause for concern. If there's something that's worrying you about their treatment, if you feel like maybe they're more obsessive or delusional about something, then you can support them into getting more treatment. But I hope these attacks don't increase stigma against mental illness, because I'm pretty sure he had more information will come out, but I think he was suffering from homelessness and all these other psychosocial problems, and this is a good thing to end on. These problems are multifactorial, right? It's biopsychosocial, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's complex. And that also means that the treatment is multifactorial. And it isn't just up to a psychiatrist, it's up to society to fund these complex care interventions at a social level. Gosh, I didn't want to get into funding or or anything like that, but I guess that it just leaks out of me. Look, that is it for this video. I've got to get back into making some proper content, not just me rambling on. So I wish you all a beautiful day. I'll see you all in the next video, which I'm going to film now that I've ventilated. Thank you for listening. I'm interested in hearing your comments. I hope everyone's doing all right. Please reach out to your friends and family if you're feeling stressed by this. I know I have, and I know I'm feeling stressed. So, it's okay, but it's not okay. at the same time. Internal conflicts happens to everyone.